My name is Adeline Cross, 37 years old, and I never imagined betrayal would introduce itself in public, dressed in confidence, with people applauding around me. I walked out, and everything you're about to hear happened because of that choice. If this story pulls you in, tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. Some truths deserve witnesses. I didn't even want to go. That's the part that still makes me pause when I replay the night in my head. I had a headache. Mila had a school project due the next morning. Nathan told me it was just another corporate thing, but he said it with that careful tone he'd started using over the past year, like every word was pre-checked for approval. It matters, he added. People will notice if you're not there. So I went. The hotel ballroom in downtown Raleigh was packed with polished smiles and practiced laughter. Crystal glasses clinked. A string quartet played something light and forgettable. Banners with the company logo hung from the walls, all navy and silver. The kind of branding that screams stability without saying anything real. Nathan looked good, too good. Tailored suit, confident posture, the version of my husband he reserved for rooms full of people who didn't know him. He kissed my cheek when we arrived, quick and distracted, already scanning the room for someone more important than me. I told myself I was being paranoid. We split up the way couples do at these things. I drifted toward the back, greeting familiar faces, smiling on autopilot. Nathan moved closer to the front, where the executives and donors gathered. That's when I saw her. Corinne Hale. I'd seen her picture before. Company website, press releases, always composed, always immaculate. In person, she was sharper somehow. Mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a sleek knot, posture that said she was used to being listened to. She stood beside Nathan like she belonged there. At first, it didn't register as anything more than professional proximity. She was his boss. Of course they'd be talking. Of course they'd be standing close. I took a sip of champagne and tried to relax. Then I heard her laugh. It wasn't loud, but it carried. Confident. Familiar. "I still can't believe how well you handled everything," she said, her hand resting lightly on Nathan's arm. Most men would have panicked. Nathan smiled. Not his public smile. The private one. The one he used at home when he thought no one was watching. "We didn't really have a choice," he replied. "It was complicated." A third voice joined in. A man I recognized as one of the board's biggest donors. "Well, you two deserve credit," he said. "Not everyone manages to keep things so discreet, especially with a baby involved." The word hit me like a dropped glass. Baby. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stood there with my champagne halfway to my lips, suddenly aware of how loud the room felt, how bright the lights were. Corinne tilted her head, smiling politely. "We've done our best to keep our personal matters from affecting the company." Personal matters. The donor chuckled. "Still, congratulations are in order. A new child is a blessing, even under unusual circumstances." Nathan nodded. Nodded. I waited for him to correct it, to laugh it off, to say there'd been a misunderstanding. He didn't. Something cold spread through my chest, slow and heavy. My hand started to shake, so I set the glass down on a passing tray before anyone could notice. I walked toward them. Each step felt unreal, like my heels weren't touching the floor. Conversations blurred around me, faces turning and turning away. I stopped just behind Nathan. "Unusual circumstances?" I said. All three of them turned. Nathan's face drained of color. "Adeline," he said, too fast. I looked at Corinne. Up close, she smelled like expensive perfume and certainty. She assessed me in a single glance, eyes flicking over my dress, my posture, my expression. No surprise, no guilt. "Hi," I said calmly. "I'm Nathan's wife." A flicker of something crossed her face. Not shock. Calculation. "Yes," she replied smoothly. "Of course you are." The donor shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. "Oh, I didn't realize—" "You didn't realize my husband had a child?" I asked. My voice was steady, even as my heart pounded. Because I didn't realize that either. Silence rippled outward. Nearby conversations stalled. A few heads turned in our direction. Nathan swallowed. This isn't the place. When exactly was the place? I asked him. Before or after the baby was born? Corinne straightened. Adeline, I understand this is upsetting, but... Don't, I said, holding up a hand. I looked back at Nathan. How old? He stared at the floor. How old is the child? I repeated. 8 months, he said quietly. 8 months. I did the math without trying. The late nights, the sudden business trips, the period when he'd claimed he was under too much stress to come home before midnight. Mila had been 10 at the time. I felt something snap. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean internal break. So this, I said, gesturing between them, is why you missed her recital, why you forgot her birthday dinner, why you told me I was overreacting when I asked if something was wrong. Nathan reached for me. I stepped back. People were openly watching now. A few phones lifted, subtle but unmistakable. Corinne cleared her throat. We should discuss this privately. No, I said. I think public honesty suits the moment. I turned to the donor. You mentioned discretion. Was that company policy or just personal convenience? His mouth opened, closed. I don't think... Right, I said. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a senior executive had a relationship with a subordinate, fathered a child, and expected his wife to find out at a cocktail party. Nathan finally looked up at me. His eyes were pleading now. Please, let's go home. We'll talk. Home. The word felt foreign. I leaned in close enough that only he could hear me. You should have told me. If you had, this might have ended quietly. He shook his head. I was going to. I just needed time. I straightened and raised my voice just enough for the nearest circle to hear. My husband has a son, I said. Apparently, so does his boss. Gasps. Whispers. Someone laughed nervously. I didn't wait for the fallout. I picked up my clutch, turned, and walked toward the exit. My legs were steady now. My thoughts were razor clear. Behind me, I heard Nathan call my name. Once. Twice. I didn't turn around. As the doors closed behind me and the noise of the ballroom faded, I felt something else settle in its place. Not grief, not rage. Resolve. They thought the worst part was the discovery. They were wrong. That night, as I stepped into the cool air and pulled my phone from my bag, I made a single promise to myself. They were going to learn exactly what they'd taken for granted. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't even go home. I drove until the city lights thinned and the roads grew quiet, then pulled into a grocery store parking lot and sat there with the engine running, staring at nothing. My hands were steady on the wheel. My breathing was slow. That scared me more than if I'd been shaking. Nathan and I had been married 14 years. 14 years of early mornings and late nights, of building something we kept calling a life because it felt permanent enough to trust. We met when he was ambitious and broke, when I still believed love meant teamwork. I had money then, family money, but I never led with it. I didn't want to be chosen for that. I wanted to be chosen for me. So I downplayed it, put it in trusts, let it sit quietly while I worked part-time and raised Mila and told myself that supporting his climb was a shared investment. When his company offered him his first big promotion, I was the one who rearranged everything. I paused my consulting work. I handled school pickups. I learned which teachers needed reminders and which deadlines mattered. When he traveled, I stayed behind and told myself that sacrifice was temporary. That's the lie women like me tell ourselves. Temporary. The warning signs didn't arrive all at once. They crept in slowly, wearing reasonable explanations. He started guarding his phone, not obviously, just a slight shift. Face down more often, notifications silenced. He said it was company policy. There were nights he came home smelling unfamiliar, not like perfume exactly, just different. I blamed the hotel soap, the dry cleaning, anything that didn't require me to say the word out loud. When I asked why he'd missed Mila's recital, he snapped at me for the first time in our marriage. Said he couldn't juggle everything. Said I didn't understand the pressure he was under. I apologized. That still makes me nauseous. There were moments I almost saw it. Corinne's name appearing more often in conversation. The way he spoke about her with a mix of admiration and irritation, like she had too much power over his mood. But I'd met her once, briefly, at another company event. She'd been cordial, distant, efficient. She looked at me like I was furniture. When Nathan started sleeping on the couch, to avoid waking me, I accepted it. When he claimed he was too exhausted for intimacy, I believed him. I told myself we were just in a season of life where things were hard. What I didn't know was that while I was folding laundry and helping with math homework, he was building a second life. One that came with fewer responsibilities and more applause. The baby changed everything, even before I knew he existed. 8 months earlier, Nathan had suddenly insisted we open new accounts for tax reasons. He pushed for separating finances, said his compensation structure was changing. I agreed, distracted by Mila starting middle school and my mother's health issues flaring up again. I didn't see it for what it was. Preparation. That night, after the gala, I checked into a hotel near the airport. I didn't want to be anywhere familiar. Nathan texted me over and over. Apologies, explanations, promises to explain everything when you're ready. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the one person who'd never sugarcoated things for me. My older sister, Rowan. She answered on the second ring. "Where are you?" she asked. "I found out Nathan has a child," I said. There was a pause. Not shock, not disbelief. "I was afraid of that," she said quietly. The words landed harder than anything I'd heard that night. "You knew?" I asked. "I suspected," she replied. I didn't have proof, but I saw the shifts, the excuses, and I heard something a few months ago. I closed my eyes. "What did you hear?" "One of my clients works in HR. Different department, same company." She mentioned a situation, an executive pregnancy, handled very quietly. I didn't put it together at first. I didn't want to. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked then finally. "Because I didn't want to be wrong," Rowan said. "And because I knew you'd need certainty, not doubt." I slid down onto the hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. "Is it his?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Yes," she said. "I'm sure. The timeline matches, and there's more." My chest tightened. "Tell me." She took extended leave, company paid, full discretion, and when she came back, he was suddenly reporting directly to her. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. "Of course he was." Rowan didn't laugh with me. "Adeline, this wasn't an accident. This was a decision. Repeatedly." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, replaying everything with new clarity. The missed moments, the distance, the subtle gaslighting that had convinced me I was imagining things. By morning, the shock had burned away. What remained was understanding. This wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal layered with planning. A child brought into the world under the assumption that I'd never find out, or that if I did, I'd stay quiet. They had underestimated me. When my phone buzzed again, it wasn't Nathan. It was a text from Mila's tablet, forwarded from her teacher. A photo from class. My daughter smiling, unaware that her world was about to shift. I stared at her face and made another decision. Whatever happened next, I would not let her learn this lesson the way I had, by doubting her instincts and apologizing for asking questions. The betrayal was real. The stakes were permanent. And I was done pretending otherwise. I didn't cry when the sun came up. I sat at the small desk in the hotel room, hair still pinned from the night before, makeup untouched, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed softly in the early light. For the first time in months, my head felt clear. Shock makes noise. Anger does too. What settled in me that morning was quieter and far more dangerous. I started with the accounts. Nathan had been careful, but not clever. The separation he'd pushed for months earlier had limits. Joint credit lines, shared liabilities, contingency clauses he'd assumed I'd never read closely. I logged in, verified balances, and froze what I could. Where I couldn't freeze, I flagged. Where I couldn't flag, I documented. Then I called my attorney. She picked up immediately. I hadn't used her in years, but she still recognized my voice. "I need you today," I said. "And I need discretion." There was a pause. "What happened?" "My husband had a child with his boss." Another pause. Longer. "All right," she said calmly. "Let's protect you." We reviewed the trust documents I'd signed a decade earlier, the ones Nathan barely glanced at back when he thought paperwork was just noise. My family's assets weren't marital property. The company interests were insulated. The house was more complicated, but not impossible. By the time we hung up, a plan existed. Not revenge. Structure. I checked out of the hotel and drove home mid-morning, timing it between school drop-off and lunch. Nathan's car wasn't in the driveway. Good. I walked through the house slowly, seeing it with new eyes. The framed photos, the furniture I'd chosen, the life I'd subsidized. I packed efficiently. Clothes first, documents second. Jewelry last. Not for sentiment, but for valuation. Everything I needed fit into 3 suitcases. When I finished, I left the rest untouched. Let him feel the absence without explanation. Before I left, I placed a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were copies, only copies, of the account freezes, the attorney's contact information, and a typed note with one line. "Do not move money. Do not contact me directly. Communicate through counsel." Then I locked the door behind me. From there, I went to Mila's school. I didn't tell her everything. I didn't need to. Children don't need details. They need stability. "We're staying with Aunt Rowan for a bit," I said lightly. "It'll be like a sleepover." She nodded, trusting me the way only a child can. That trust hardened something inside my chest. I would not fail her. That afternoon, I made 3 more calls. The first was to the realtor who'd sold us the house years earlier. I didn't explain why. I didn't need to. I asked for comps and a quiet valuation. She understood the word quiet. The second was to the accountant who managed my trusts. I asked for updated reports, current exposure, and confirmation that no changes had been made without my authorization. None had. The third call was the most important. I asked for a meeting with the board liaison I'd never met in person, the one whose job was to act as a buffer between ownership and operations. "I'm ready to be visible," I said. There was silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "Understood." By late afternoon, my phone finally rang again. Nathan. I watched it buzz on the table, his name flashing insistently. He called 3 times. Then he texted, "Please, just tell me where you are. We need to talk." I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded his message to my attorney and turned the phone face down. At 7 that evening, Rowan poured me a glass of water and sat across from me at her kitchen table. "You're very calm," she said. "I'm done being confused," I replied. As if summoned by the words, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't pleading, it was panic, a voicemail notification, then another, then a message sent in all caps. "Why can't I access the accounts?" I stared at the screen, feeling nothing but certainty. Nathan was just beginning to understand, and I was already several steps ahead. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It spread. Slowly at first, like a pressure change no one could quite explain. Then faster, sharper, until it reached everything Nathan had built his sense of safety around. By the second morning at Rowan's house, his messages had shifted from confusion to accusation. "You had no right. This is extreme. You're hurting our daughter." I didn't answer any of them. What I did answer were emails. My attorney forwarded his first formal response just before noon. He was requesting temporary access to joint funds, claiming hardship. The phrasing was almost laughable. Nathan had always been good at sounding reasonable, even when he wasn't. The denial went out an hour later. At work, the consequences arrived faster. Corinne's office had gone quiet overnight. The kind of quiet that follows a closed-door meeting where nothing is written down but everything is understood. An internal review was announced under the bland heading of Conflict of Interest Compliance. Nathan wasn't mentioned by name, but he didn't need to be. He called me again when he realized his corporate card no longer worked. This time, I listened to the voicemail. "Adeline," he said, breathless. "Something's wrong. My access is limited. They pulled me out of a meeting this morning. I need you to talk to your lawyer and fix this. You're overreacting. Overreacting." The word landed flat. By midweek, the social effects began. Mutual friends stopped texting in groups and started reaching out individually. Carefully, testing the ground. "Are you okay? I heard something strange. Please tell me it's not true. If you need anything." I responded to none of it. Silence has a way of doing its own work. Corinne wasn't silent. She sent me an email from a private address, carefully composed, politely predatory. "Adeline, I regret that you found out this way. I want you to know this was never meant to hurt you or your daughter. Nathan and I care deeply about each other, and our child deserves stability. I hope we can approach this with maturity. I read it once. Then I forwarded it to my attorney and archived it. 2 days later, she took a leave of absence. Official reason? Personal matters. Unofficial reality. The board didn't want her visible while questions were being asked. Nathan, meanwhile, was unraveling. He showed up at Rowan's house unannounced that Friday evening. I saw him through the window, standing on the sidewalk like a stranger, tie loosened, jacket in his hand. He rang the bell twice before Rowan answered. I didn't go downstairs. I listened as he tried to sound composed. "She won't talk to me," he said. "I just want to see Mila." Rowan didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "You'll go through the proper channels," she replied. "And you'll leave." There was a pause. Then his voice cracked. "I made a mistake." "No," Rowan said. "You made a series of choices." The door closed. That night, my attorney called. "They've requested mediation," she said. "Sooner than expected." "Who?" I asked. "Your husband's company and his boss's legal team. Separately." I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling. That was fast. "They're afraid," she said. "They should be." By the weekend, the rumor mill was fully awake. Someone leaked the existence of the baby. Not names, not details, just enough to create speculation. Corinne's reputation for control began to fracture. Nathan's for reliability followed close behind. And then came the first desperate move. Sunday night, close to midnight, my phone rang from an unknown number. I didn't answer. A text followed seconds later. "I'll do anything. Please, just talk to me." I watched the screen go dark after I locked it. They'd assumed I would panic, that I'd beg for explanations, that I'd be too shocked to act. They were wrong. The consequences had started, and I wasn't done watching them unfold. The invitation arrived on a Monday morning. Mandatory mediation, neutral location, attorneys present. No surprises, according to the language. The meeting was scheduled in a private conference room at the company's downtown office, the one Nathan had worked in for 7 years without ever realizing who ultimately signed off on the lease. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not to intimidate, to observe. Nathan was already there, pacing near the windows, phone pressed to his ear. He looked smaller somehow, less polished. His suit didn't sit right anymore, like it belonged to someone else. Corinne sat at the table, back straight, hands folded, her expression carefully neutral. She didn't look at me when I walked in. That was the first crack. The mediator stood, smiling tightly. Introductions were made. Attorneys nodded to one another. Then the board liaison entered last, carrying a slim folder. The room settled. "Before we begin," the liaison said, "there's a clarification we need to make for the record. Corinne finally turned toward me. Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. This mediation involves interests that extend beyond personal matters, the liaison continued. As such, the majority stakeholder has requested to be present. Nathan frowned. Majority stakeholder? The liaison looked at me. Ms. Cross? I stood. The chair scraped softly against the floor. Every sound felt amplified. I don't work here, I said calmly. So I understand the confusion. Nathan stared at me, his face blank. I also don't attend board meetings, I continued. I don't involve myself in daily operations. That was intentional. I prefer distance. Corinne's lips parted. Just a fraction. But ownership is another matter, I said. And ownership doesn't disappear just because it's quiet. The liaison placed the folder on the table and slid it forward. Adeline Cross is the controlling shareholder of the holding trust that acquired this firm 3 years ago, he said. She holds 61%. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was absolute. Nathan looked from the folder to me, then back again, as if the words needed to rearrange themselves into something survivable. That's not, he started. True? I finished for him. It is. Corinne finally spoke. This is highly inappropriate, she said sharply. You should have disclosed. I wasn't required to, I replied. Disclosure obligations work downward, not upward. Her composure cracked then, just enough to show panic. The mediator cleared his throat. Given this new information, perhaps we should— No, I said. Let's continue. I turned to Nathan. You asked me to talk, I said. So listen. His eyes were glassy now. You own the company? I own the company you work for, I corrected. Not the one you thought you were loyal to. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. You hid a child, I continued. You hid a relationship. You hid financial maneuvering you assumed I'd never question. And you did it while standing in rooms like this one, collecting praise. Corinne pushed back from the table. This is a personal attack. This is governance, I said evenly. And ethics. I picked up my phone and placed it on the table. I won't discuss custody or divorce here, I said. That's already in motion. What I will say is this. Effective immediately, both of you are under formal review. Nathan shook his head slowly. You're doing this to punish us. I met his eyes. No, I'm doing this because you forgot who you were accountable to. Corinne stood. You can't. I can, I said. And I am. The mediator finally found his voice. Perhaps we should adjourn. There's nothing left to mediate, I said. Not here. I gathered my bag and turned toward the door. Behind me, Nathan's voice broke. Adeline, please. I stopped just short of the exit. I didn't ruin your life, I said without turning around. I stopped protecting it. Then I walked out. By the time the elevator doors closed, my phone was already vibrating with messages. Whispers were becoming statements. Statements were becoming records. Nathan had lost his footing in front of the only audience he'd ever cared about. And this time, there was no way to spin what everyone had just seen. They tried to control the story. That was their first mistake. Within 24 hours of the mediation, Nathan's name disappeared from internal directories. Corinne's leave became indefinite. Official statements were drafted and redrafted, scrubbed of anything resembling truth. But silence doesn't stop speculation. It invites it. The first post appeared on a Tuesday morning. Anonymous, short, careful. Funny how a senior executive takes personal leave right after conflict of interest rumors surface. Even funnier when her direct report is suddenly sidelined. It didn't name them. It didn't have to. By noon, screenshots followed. Old press releases. Timeline comparisons. Someone noticed the overlap between Corinne's maternity leave and Nathan's sudden promotion. Someone else pulled archived photos from a charity event. Her hand on his arm. His smile unmistakably intimate. The story assembled itself. Nathan called me 6 times that day. I didn't answer any of them. His attorney tried next, requesting an emergency call to address reputational harm. Mine responded with a single sentence. We decline comment. Corinne's response was louder. She leaked her own narrative through a friendly business columnist, framed it as a consensual relationship between adults, emphasized privacy, claimed she'd been targeted by a vindictive spouse abusing corporate influence. The article ran online by evening. It backfired. Within hours, comments flooded in. Former employees, industry watchers, people who'd been quiet for years. Power imbalance matters. She signed his performance reviews. This wasn't private, it was protected. Then the receipts dropped. An internal memo surfaced showing Corinne had personally approved Nathan's bonus during the same quarter she was pregnant. Another email revealed HR concerns that had been resolved externally. Someone leaked the exact date of the firm's acquisition, 3 years earlier, followed by a single sentence that spread like wildfire. She slept with an employee in a company she didn't even own. That sentence wasn't accurate, but the truth underneath it was worse. Nathan finally left a voicemail I listened to. You planned this, he said, voice hoarse. You waited. You let it happen so you could destroy us. I deleted it without replying. The public didn't see destruction. They saw consequence. A hashtag emerged by accident, born from a sarcastic reply and picked up by the algorithm. Quiet ownership. It trended locally by morning. People speculated wildly about me, about my motives, about how long I'd known. I became a shadow figure in their version of the story, calm, faceless, patient. I let them speculate. Behind the scenes, the board moved quickly. An independent investigation was announced. Outside counsel retained. Statements released emphasizing values and accountability. Nathan's professional credibility collapsed in real time. He'd been the safe choice, the dependable one. Now he was a liability no one wanted attached to their name. Corinne attempted one last maneuver. She reached out directly, bypassing attorneys, sending a message through a mutual acquaintance. We can still contain this if you're willing to step back. Step back. I forwarded the message to the board and blocked the number. By the end of the week, the company's largest client suspended negotiations pending the investigation. A speaking engagement Corinne had scheduled for the following month quietly removed her name from the program. Nathan's face appeared in an industry blog, cropped awkwardly from an old group photo, captioned with a question mark. What went wrong? That question followed him everywhere. And then came the moment that ended any chance of recovery. An internal compliance report, sanitized but unmistakable, was leaked to a trade publication. It didn't editorialize. It didn't accuse. It simply listed dates, approvals, and policy violations. Facts don't shout. They don't need to. By the time the article finished circulating, Nathan was no longer calling. Corinne was no longer issuing statements. They were both waiting for outcomes, for decisions, for doors to close. And I was watching it all unfold exactly as it should. Because escalation doesn't require force. It only requires the truth reaching the right people at the right time. The collapse wasn't loud. It was procedural. Once the investigation moved from internal review to external counsel, everything slowed down in a way that felt merciless. Meetings became letters. Letters became filings. Nathan stopped being a person with explanations and started being a name attached to documents. The divorce petition was served on a Thursday morning. My attorney timed it carefully, after the company announced Corinne's formal removal from leadership duties, but before Nathan's severance package could be finalized. That window mattered. It meant his income was frozen in limbo, not protected, not guaranteed. Nathan's lawyer argued hardship. Mine argued record. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Temporary orders were issued within days. Custody first. Mila stayed with me, not because of drama, because stability mattered, and I could provide it without disruption. Nathan was granted supervised visitation pending the outcome of the investigation. The wording was clinical, but the effect was devastating. He called my attorney afterward, begged to see his daughter alone. The answer was no. Financially, the dismantling was precise. Joint accounts were formally divided under court supervision. His access remained limited. My trusts remained untouched. The house went on the market quietly, priced to sell, not to linger. The judge authorized it after reviewing asset disclosures that painted a very clear picture of who had funded what. Nathan had assumed the house was his safety net. It wasn't. His parents arrived next. They requested a meeting with me through a family intermediary, not directly. I agreed, on neutral ground, with counsel present. His father looked older than I remembered. His mother didn't meet my eyes. "We didn't raise him to do this," his father said, voice tight. "I know," I replied, "but you raised him." That ended the conversation. Within a week, his family withdrew financial support. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. They couldn't defend him without defending what he'd done. And they wouldn't. Corinne's fallout was harsher. Her termination was framed as failure to disclose a material conflict of interest. No public scandal, no press conference. Just a quiet removal and a very loud absence. The severance she'd expected evaporated under legal review. Her professional network fractured. Invitations stopped coming. Former allies stopped answering. The child remained invisible in public discourse, as he should have. None of this was his fault. But the consequences still reached his parents. Nathan tried to fight. He filed motions, requested continuances, claimed emotional distress. None of it changed the facts. Each delay cost him more: legal fees, reputation, leverage. By the time the final settlement discussions began, he was living in a short-term rental on the edge of the city, his belongings reduced to what fit in his car. He asked for spousal support. The judge denied it. I was granted full legal custody, shared physical visitation under structured terms. The decision cited demonstrated judgment concerns and ongoing instability. Nathan didn't look at me when it was read. Afterward, in the hallway, his brother approached me quietly. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." I nodded. So am I. The last piece fell into place a week later. The board finalized its findings. Nathan's contract was terminated for cause. No bonus, no recommendation, no quiet landing elsewhere. He emailed me that night. "I have nothing left." I read it once, then closed my laptop. Because what he had lost, he had dismantled himself. And what I had built, carefully, patiently, was still standing. The fallout was complete, and there was nothing left to negotiate. I didn't plan the last meeting. That surprised people when they asked later why I agreed, why I showed up, why I didn't let the lawyers finish it without me. The truth was simpler than anything they expected. I wanted to see him when there was nothing left to hide behind. Nathan asked for the meeting through his attorney, who framed it carefully. Closure. Personal matters. One final conversation. I agreed on one condition: neutral location, daylight, no lawyers in the room. He chose a quiet cafe near the courthouse, the kind of place meant for quick conversations and faster exits. I arrived on time. He was already there, seated near the window, shoulders slumped, coffee untouched. For a moment, I barely recognized him. The confidence was gone. The posture that once took up space had folded inward, like he was trying not to be noticed. I sat across from him and placed my phone face down on the table. "This is your time," I said. "Say what you came to say." He looked at me for a long second, as if waiting for something: anger, tears, accusation. When none of it came, his voice cracked. "I ruined everything." I didn't respond. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he continued. "I never planned for it to hurt you. Or Mila. You planned every step except the consequences," I said evenly. He nodded, eyes wet. I was weak. "No," I said. "You were comfortable." That landed harder. "I loved you," he said quickly, desperately. "I still do." I leaned back slightly. "You loved what I made possible. You loved being supported without being questioned." "That's not fair." he whispered. It's precise, I replied. He pressed his hands together, knuckles white. Corinne's gone. My job is gone. I don't even recognize my life anymore. I met his eyes then. Good. The word stunned him. I didn't do this to punish you, I continued. I did it to stop lying. To myself, to our daughter, to the world you were allowed to manipulate. He swallowed. I just want a chance to fix things. There is no fixing, I said. There is only ending. He flinched. I'm not your enemy, I added, but I am no longer your shelter. Silence stretched between us. Outside, a bus passed, its reflection sliding across the glass. He looked smaller now, not broken, exposed. I miss Mila, he said quietly. I know, I replied. Does she... His voice faltered. Does she hate me? No, I said. She's disappointed, and she's learning. That hurt him more than hate would have. I never wanted to be this man, he said. And yet, I said, you were willing to be him as long as no one named it. He nodded, tears finally falling. I don't have anything left to offer you. I stood. That's the first honest thing you've said. He looked up at me, panic flaring. Please, don't walk away like this. I paused, hand on the chair. You didn't lose me when I found out, I said. You lost me when you decided I wasn't worth telling. I picked up my phone. You can still be a father, I added. That part is up to you, but you will never again be my husband, my partner, or my problem. He reached out instinctively, stopping himself halfway. Adeline, he said. I don't know who I am without you. I finally allowed myself to look at him fully. That, I said calmly, was never my responsibility. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, he didn't call my name. He knew better now. Outside, the air was crisp, the afternoon ordinary and bright. I stood for a moment on the sidewalk, breathing it in, feeling the weight lift. Not all at once, but enough. Some endings are loud. This one was final, and I didn't look back. Time doesn't heal everything, but it does reveal what lasts. A year passed without ceremony, no dramatic milestones. Just quiet accumulation. Days stacked carefully on top of one another until the past no longer dictated the shape of my mornings. Mila grew taller, stronger. She stopped asking questions that didn't have answers and started asking ones that mattered. We found a rhythm that didn't revolve around someone else's moods or absences. School drop-offs became calm. Evenings became ours. She learned, without being told, that love doesn't require shrinking. I returned to work, not as a shadow or a signature behind glass, but as myself. I attended meetings, asked questions, set boundaries. People adjusted quickly when they realized clarity wasn't negotiable. The company stabilized. New leadership, new tone. The crisis became a case study, then a footnote. Nathan faded faster than I expected. At first, his name still appeared in the wrong places. Emails sent to outdated lists, comments whispered by people who didn't know what else to say. Then it stopped. He took a job outside the industry, somewhere small, somewhere that didn't care who he used to be. I didn't track him. I didn't need to. What mattered was that his absence no longer registered as loss. Corinne disappeared entirely, not dramatically, just completely. Her professional presence dissolved. No reinvention arc, no redemption tour. Power doesn't always return to those who misuse it, and I didn't need it to. What surprised me most was how little anger remained. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because I no longer carried him. Betrayal, I learned, isn't the moment someone chooses someone else. It's the moment they decide you won't notice. Once that illusion breaks, freedom follows. On a quiet Sunday morning, Mila and I sat on the back steps of our new place. Smaller, brighter, chosen deliberately. She leaned against me, reading, comfortable in the silence. "Are you happy?" she asked suddenly. I didn't answer right away. I considered the question honestly, without performance or reassurance. "Yes," I said finally. "I am." She smiled and went back to her book. That was enough. Somewhere along the way, I stopped measuring my life by what I'd survived and started measuring it by what I protected. My time. My dignity. My daughter's sense of what love should look like. Nathan thought he'd outgrown me. In reality, he never understood the ground he was standing on, and when it gave way, it wasn't because I pushed. It was because I stepped aside. The rest took care of itself. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story moved you, surprised you, or made you reflect on your own experiences, click the hype button and let me know you felt it too. I'd really love to hear your thoughts, or even your own story, in the comments below. You're not alone here. And if you want more stories like this, told honestly and without filters, hit subscribe and tap the like button. Your support keeps these stories alive. I'll see you in the next one.